All right. We're rock and rolling here, baby.
Cool. Works for me. All right.
All right. Greetings from the fifth dimension, and welcome to Happy Dance's Guide to the Revolution. I am super excited to have you on, Eric.
Thank you for having me, sir.
So this is new for me. So far, everybody I've had on the podcast is somebody that I knew personally, either from high school or gov school or Penn State or work or volunteer stuff. So this is the first time I'm having somebody on that I don't know personally. So this is new for everybody. So we're just gonna get right into it. And since I don't know you personally, I wonder if you could just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself, tell your story a little bit, like who the hell are you?
Well, I'm Eric. Let's see. Honestly, there's really not much to tell. I grew up. Most of my childhood was in Pennsylvania, you know what I'm saying, in NEPA, in the Gooseboro area. I went to North Pocono. It's a lot of people that I've lost contact with. Yeah, it really wasn't that bad, honestly. It really wasn't that bad. I was treated equally. Well, to me anyway, I was treated equally. You feel me? I was treated like part of the in crowd or however you want to call it. But I wasn't. Of course, I had my little here and there with certain people, but you know what they say, don't let a couple rotten apples ruin the bunch, and I didn't. So
yeah. So you left North Pocono and went where?
Virginia.
And you lived there for a while? Is that where you're at now, or you're in Philly now, right?
No, I'm still in Virginia now.
Virginia, cool.
Yeah.
And what are you doing down there?
Right now I'm just working, bro. I work at Wawa right now, and I'm just working and trying to see what's next for me. It's nothing that I have planned. I don't do plans because I don't like plans, because I feel what's the point, especially when most of the time they just fall through anyway. So
yeah,
live.
I'm totally chaos, and I don't know which direction, what the hell I'm doing. So I plan definitely bring it a little bit and quiet some of the noise,
Right.
But so that's cool. So we got connected through a mutual friend, Christy Prati, and I know her from North Pocono. I graduated with her sister, Lauren. So shout out to Christy. Shout out to Lauren. What's up, girls? How we doing? Hope you get to watch this and enjoy it. She's great. So I'm assuming you were friends with her during your time in North Pocono, and yeah, she rocks.
Yeah, between her, actually, it wasn't really that many females that I was cool with, because I hung out with what you would call the nerd, but proud to be a nerd, so I'm okay with that.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So, I made a post on Facebook because I've been doing this podcast for a while, and then you have this George Floyd thing and the protests and the riots, etc. And I'm realizing that I've never really brought somebody in to specifically talk about their experience with racial injustice in this country or their experience with police brutality. Although I did have somebody on who talked about their experience with police brutality, but it wasn't necessarily the intent or the focus. And it doesn't necessarily have to be here either, but I do kind of want to get your perspective and paint a broader picture. And it was kind of a harsh reality too when I posted it up there. I'm realizing I don't have an abundance of black friends. It's just the reality of my life. It's not something that I did on purpose. But I went to a white school, Penn State. My program was mostly white kids. I don't know. It just kind of, it's even though it's not segregation, there still is some segregation in this country, and you kind of get born into it in a way, and it's kind of it's messed up,
Yeah, I definitely feel that, bro. I definitely feel that.
So do you have any stories that you want to share? And it's okay if you don't, but if you have any specific stories you want to share, either about an experience that you had with police and or just experiences of racism towards you, either low key or overt, and anything that you want to kind of talk about to kind of give people an understanding, or do you not have much of that you dealt with?
It's a 50-50 thing for me. You feel me? Between growing up there and then moving here, you would think it would be a big shift, because, the area that I was living in Pennsylvania, was predominantly white, right?
Yeah.
But then move here in the South, the area I'm living in, it's predominantly black. You feel me?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you would think it would be a bigger shift, but you still hear and see certain stuff going on between just people. And even if they don't say anything like they would in Pennsylvania,
yeah,
you could still tell because you could see them. You could notice the looks like they're disgusted. Like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm still ringing you up. So have a good day.
Huh. So that's just with like people at work or whatever.
Yeah.
Any experiences with police where you felt like they were treating you a certain type of way?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. There is no question there. I can remember a couple years ago, I was hanging with my homeboy and ex-homeboy, I'll say, because we don't chill anymore, but
yeah,
we were all kicking it and it was me, him, and it was two girls. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm not worried about it. But mind you, I'm the only black guy in the car. It was me, him, and the two girls. Who are they going to come to first? Me.
Yeah.
Long story short, I feel like there's a certain level of privilege. I really do. And I hate saying it, but when you see it, you can't deny it,
Yeah.
Like, we were in my car. All right, cool. They wanted to lie about the situation. Oh no, we weren't doing this, we weren't doing that, we weren't smoking, we weren't. Bro, I'm not about to lie. I'm not about to lie and then make it a bigger deal. Like, maybe you can do that, but I feel I can't do that. You feel me?
Yeah.
Then they dig deeper and, well, why'd you lie? Did you see the situation? Like,
there's just more pressure on it in general. You go into it with like a sense of like, this is like my adversary here. The police are like an adversary where somebody with privilege looks at a police officer as like an ally to them. Like, whatever they're going to do, they're going to help me out. And it's like, that ain't the reality for some people.
Yeah. That's facts, bro. That's facts. Like, and even before then, like when I first moved here and I first got my license and stuff, like I had turned 18, started working in the shipyard or whatever I was doing. I was coming home and I got pulled over one morning because I worked third shift, I got pulled over one morning and they got put in cuffs and stuff. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm just going to say I didn't get any badge numbers. I didn't have any, proof or anything. So what am I going to do? It's their word against mine. I'm putting cuffs. Yeah. I'm hitting the stomach. I'm not trying to make it like a big deal because I took it like a champ. I lived, but still it could have been worse than what it was. Or it didn't even have to happen in all honesty because why?
And what did you do that justified them cuffing you?
Nothing. They literally came to the car, walked up. You smell marijuana? I didn't even smoke for 3 days. So how do you smell marijuana? Okay. Well, can you step out of the car? All right. Put your hands on the hood, get cuffed, put on the side of the road. And then it went from there.
And then what do they do? Search your vehicle?
One of them claimed that he was searching it, right? But I see him glancing up, looking over at the other officer the whole time. Why are you staring at him? You got a job to do. Just search the vehicle, see that there's nothing there. Let me go. You want to prolong the situation. Yeah. And I'm sorry if I get, heated about this, but I'm a very emotional person, I guess, because it bothers me when I think about it to this day. Like, why? You prolonged the whole situation. You could have just did what you need to do. Let me go. If you weren't going to do that, do what you're going to do. Move on. But that held up a portion of my life. Now I just can't think, every officer's okay. At one point I used to think, hey, that officer's cool. That officer's cool. Now, even with me knowing that certain officers are cool, I still can't be like, no, I'm okay. I had one offer me a ride home, ride from work or whatever. No, I'm good. I walked in the rain. I'm good. Like, there's just a certain stigma amongst black people. It really is.
Yep. Yeah, and it creates like a culture of mistrust between groups, and then when you even have like good folks on both sides, like they don't even trust each other, even though everybody's everybody's playing by the rules, whatever. It still creates like this whole tension.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you have this, George Floyd gets murdered, and he's one of a long list of other people who have experienced similar things and ended up dead as well, and most of them get justice, and I think that's what really set people off this time. Like, on top of the COVID thing going on, they see this happen, and it's so heinous and it's so terrible that these other people could stand by and watch this happen. It's not like this guy acted alone, and if these other cops got punished for doing what they did in the past, I don't think you would have had these protests to the extent that you've had these protests. But it's because people knew, like, this guy's nothing's going to happen to this guy if we don't do something about it. That's how it felt to me anyway.
I agree.
Yeah. And when I started this podcast, I kicked it off by writing something that I titled "The Declaration of Interdependence." And
okay.
This is a short little thing, just kind of setting the tone for what we're aiming for here, and like some of the language I use, I kind of use the analogy of like a house, and how we're all living in this house together. We're all sharing this house together, and it's up to us to renovate the house, because if the rooms aren't serving us anymore, then we have to renovate them, and we're at a point now where it's like we're either letting them rot. Like, if you're too conservative, you're basically letting the room rot. There's room serving us fine. There's no problems here, Or it's like the other extreme that we're dealing with now is like people are setting the room on fire. It's like, this room is not serving us, and it hasn't served us for so long, and we're so sick and tired of this shit that it's like we're just gonna set it on fire. Now maybe we can renovate it, And it's like, I don't want to say like I predicted this was going to happen, because that seems like stupid, but lots of people did. It was like kind of in the air. Like, you could feel the tension bubbling up, and something was going to happen eventually,
Yep. Everybody knew. And it's so funny because me and my homegirl, we talk about this all the time. Well, not just this specific subject, but we talk about certain stuff happening all the time. And she was saying, like, we might be stuck in a time loop, because the same thing that happened with the riots beforehand, what happened with the spaceship going up and stuff, what's happening now? The riots going on, Space Shuttle X gets launched. Like, are we really stuck in a time loop? Well, I think about this stuff daily, so.
Yeah. Well, there is a cyclical nature to things, right? Because, like, even if things improved from, let's say, like the civil rights movements of the 60s, like, there's still a lot of work to be done, right? So, like, you get to a point where it's like, okay, like, some people think we're done. We've done enough. We don't need to do anything else. And other people are like, nah, there's still lots to do here. There's still lots of inequalities and injustices going on, and there's still a lot of work to be done. So you kind of enter that cycle again of, like, needing reform, like needing to hold people accountable, like needing to address some of these systemic problems that we've created, rather than just ignoring them and pretending that they're not problems.
Yeah. But people don't realize that's exactly what's happening now. Like, that's exactly what's happening. Now, it can't be ignored. You know what I mean? Like, you can't.
Yeah.
If you try, it's going to go further and further. We're not trying to take it to that extent, but people are tired. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. It doesn't matter. People across the board are tired.
Yeah.
Like.
And we have this discussion around, like, white privilege in this country, and it's so obvious to me, like, the examples of when it's at play. Like, you have people who are, like, basically not affected by this. It's like, I don't know, my life's going on. I'm continuing. I don't mean me personally, but me to some extent for sure. Like, I'm not really affected by this. Like, I'm chilling. And it's like, that's like a truckload of privilege to be in that position, to feel like whatever happens, like, I'm good. It's like, do you, like, realize how privileged you have to be in that position, that, like, there's people in the streets protesting something and you're like, meh, whatever. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And,
at least people are doing something.
Yeah. And it seems to be working too. I mean, there's been a couple key places that have already made some adjustments in terms of policy and, defunding some of their police programs to some extent. So people say this shit doesn't work. Clearly you're wrong, because it does work.
Yeah. You know? That would be my argument as well.
Yeah. And I certainly don't want to like come off that I'm condoning the violence or condemning it. I'm merely just recognizing that it was inevitable. Like if you make the game unfair for long enough, people aren't going to play the game that you think you're playing. They're going to flip the table over, and there's going to be problems. So we got to figure out a way to make the game fair so people don't flip the table over, you know? And it's going to take some work.
Like, honestly, it's crazy. I'm sorry for cutting you off. I apologize.
No, you're good.
I think it's crazy because people don't realize this, like you said, it's inevitable, because I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, because what happened with Black Wall Street? Completely bombed. Gone.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, and people don't know about these things. Like if you don't, because we don't learn, I didn't learn this shit in high school. I didn't learn it. We barely learned it, you know? Like we learn about the Civil War, but there's not much on the civil rights movement. You don't learn much about that at all. You don't learn much about Jim Crow. You don't learn much about any of that stuff. Like I didn't learn that stuff until I took a Martin Luther King Jr. class at Penn State, where I finally was like, whoa, like I didn't know any of this, you know?
And see, I say that's a shift.
Good.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think that's the shift, like, from where I was moving down here, because down here, it's crazy. They automatically taught us, like, you know, Virginia history and stuff, because I'm in Virginia, so they automatically get to teach us that. But then certain stuff that they didn't teach up there, they tweaked on or they hit on, but then they went deeper into it here, you know?
Yeah. And if you don't learn about these things, it's easy to sit and be like, it's not a problem. There's no problems. Like, what are you even talking about? And it's like, no, you just don't know. You just haven't read anything or watched anything or learned anything. So it's easy for you to sit there and say there's no problem when you're speaking from a point of ignorance, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So another kind of main theme of this podcast is it's Happy Dance's Guide to the Revolution, but revolution is spelled with a 3 where the E should be. And that's because like you flip it backwards and it says love, you know?
Okay.
And that's something that like, if we're going to have this revolution, which it seems a lot of people are in favor of, you know, it has to be with love, because what are we really accomplishing if it's not? We're just going to transfer power from like one hell-bent group to the other. Like that's not going to really solve anything, you know? So no thanks on that one, you know? But that's easier said than done, you know? But like what I'm envisioning is something that includes like empathy for other people who are suffering, you know? Something that is compassionate, that's built on like loving and caring for each other. And but like it just comes down about caring about other people, like other than just yourself. Like you gotta love yourself and care about yourself, but you also have to like expand that out to your family and your community and your country and your planet, you know, because that's how we're going to solve these problems, is stopping being so selfish.
I definitely agree. Like, but see, I personally, like, at least in my own life, the way I feel, not wholeheartedly now because I'm working on it, but I honestly feel people have been hurt so much, it's hard for them to just change what they know. You feel me?
Yeah.
Like, even besides the race and all that, I just mean in general, like, it's hard for people, especially now, hard for people to love because they've been through so much, you know, between relationships, family, everything. Like, it's so hard now, and it doesn't make anything easier. You would think with time progressing, there would be more outlets and more people to talk to, but it seems like as time goes on, it gets harder and harder to find those people.
Yeah. And I think a big problem with it too is we're kind of tribal beings, you know, like humans come from tribes. So it's really easy for us, like in our own psychology, to have like an enemy group, and like that's the enemy group, and there's nothing you can do or say that's going to change my mind because that's the enemy, and they're out to get me, and they want to destroy me, and they want to take everything I have. So like, and that's like true to some extent. There's like, it's not like completely false, that statement, but it's like you got to like get past that part and actually realize that like, oh, we're actually in like a global community, and we actually rely on each other to do these things, and we can do a lot more by making friends than we can by making enemies.
Exactly.
But when you've been fighting a group for so long, it's hard to like set that all aside and move forward in a positive direction, because you're like, you want that revenge, you want that like, whether it's justice or you want to like feel like they got what they deserved, you know. But that's not love. That's something different. That's like envy, or that's like
yeah, vengeance, whatever you want to call it.
yeah, and that's not really coming from a great place, but it's understandable too.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. What is, like, if we do have this revolution and it is based in love, like, what does it look like? How does, like, what's the outcome? What is it? You know, you ever, any thoughts on that? Like, what's the end goal of what this whole thing looks like?
I personally feel, I can't even say it's going to be, you know, all sunshine and rainbows and everybody kumbaya and everything. You know, we're still going to be working on stuff, you know, but we'll definitely have a better understanding of one another. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's not even going to be close to what it is now. Like,
right.
Oh, well, that guy's black, that guy's white. Like, what's that old song? Got the whole world. And it's some song to where, you know what I'm talking about.
Got the whole wide world in his hands.
You feel me?
Yeah.
What I got from that song, even at a young age, unity. That's just the key to everything. People just need to unite.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that's got me scratching my head right now. It's like you have this Black Lives Matter movement, and like we can't even get unity behind that statement. It's like, how can we not have unity behind that statement? Like, why do we, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Like, it's pretty simple. Like, we don't got to argue about that. We could just, if we could all just agree on that, we would be one step closer to doing something here. But instead, everybody's got to like feel special and feel like, well, this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, that's not unity. That's
right. That's still separation.
That's ego. That's like feeling like you're left out of this, you know, and you're really not, you know. And something I was thinking about the other day too is like, even if you want to look at this whole thing from like a selfish perspective, which sometimes I try to do that. I'm like, because if you can't make the argument for like love and empathy, you can at least try to like speak to someone's like selfish nature, you know. And like, kind of the way I thought it out is like, if as a nation we do not accept police brutality against, I'm having that happen to me, you know. Like, if we can't put a knee on George Floyd's neck, then we can't put a knee on my neck either, you know. Where if you look at it the other way, if we like accept it, like, oh, like you can put this knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, doesn't really matter, then I'm like 2 steps away from that happening to me, you know.
Right.
With the a change in power or a change in whatever, and the next thing you know, that's me or that's my family members. And it's like, we got to realize it's like, how's the saying go? If there's not justice for everybody, there's justice for nobody, or something like that. I forget how this statement goes, but same idea. You know?
I definitely agree.
This police brutality stuff happens to lots of people. Like, it's obviously not just the black community that happens to, but it obviously happens disproportionately more. Or at least that's what it seems like anyway, you know?
Right.
But like it's like two problems running into themselves, you know? So you have like this racial injustice, you have like this inequality, you have these systemic problems, and then you also have this like police state that's super well funded, and these people thinking they can do whatever they want with impunity because they're protected in so many ways, and you're having those two different problems like create one super problem. And like, we're too busy arguing about like what the problem is. It's like they're both a problem creating the super problem, You know, it's totally a mess. I'm all fired up now. I don't even know where we're going. Fired up,
bro. Honestly, the whole thing is in the way. Honestly, that's why I never supported either side. Like people, well, what are you, Democrat, Republic? Neither, because they're both stupid to me. It's stupid to pick sides on who should run the country. Like it should be the people anyway.
Yes. And that's one of the other main themes of this podcast is nonpartisan political reform. Because I agree, like I know very few people who actually like one party or the other. And if they do, I'm like, you're not, like, they annoy me. It's almost like they're so entrenched in their own beliefs. It's like you're just willfully blind because you've already picked your team. Where like people like you and I who like are refusing to pick a team, we're much more open-minded to like solutions and moving forward together, you know? So that brings me to the next question. Like something I try to ask everybody on the podcast is like, if you had some creative control over our government, our democracy, like what might you try to change? Like going back to the analogy of the room in the house, if you wanted to renovate one of the rooms in the house, like what would you do? What kind of plans would you put together? And like, I know I'm asking like 6 questions at once here, but like you can answer that from like a broad perspective, or if we want to get into things related to racial injustice or police brutality, we can like look at those specific things too, because I think there's a lot to touch on there as well.
You know what? I'll start with this. One of the main things I would start with, more money for these workers. We claim our, what are they called? Essential workers. We claim that they're essential workers, but you give them the money just to take it back. But you clearly stated that we're still in a pandemic. So I'm not understanding how you're taking the money back that you're giving for a pandemic. I'm not understanding that.
Wait, who's taking money back? I must have missed this. What's happening?
Not like, okay, so essential workers. Yeah, like clearly y'all can afford to give that money. But then I'm hearing certain arguments from people, well, they can't afford it. How would you feel if you were a bank and you were giving somebody this money? But I'm a bank. I make the money. So in my head, that's BS saying that there's not enough. You can make the money. That's stupid to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So basically the argument you're making is like, if we get these, let's say you work at a grocery store and the pandemic comes and you get like $1 an hour raise or $2 an hour raise or whatever the hell it is. You're saying now they're like taking those back away from people now that we flattened the curve or whatever the language is that they're, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yep. Yeah, that's a mess too.
Like this shit doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. Like, and then they wonder why people have attitudes at work. Don't get me wrong. I will go when I do my job, but don't ask me to go further than what my job entails at that point. Like,
yeah. Like changes to our democracy and like just to kind of give more context, like use your imagination. Like I know there's a lot of like institutional inertia, like there's a lot of things in the way and barriers to things, but like let's pretend that they weren't there. Like if we had the freedom to make these changes, is there anything that you think we need to change or get rid of or add on to our system to kind of make it work better?
That's a deep question there. That's a lot I could touch on. For one, I'm gonna say certain crimes, automatic life, just automatic life. Like pedophilia, life. I'm not gonna say kill the person because they didn't kill anyone, but unless they kill someone, then in which case, hey, automatic death, whatever. But that's just me. You know, certain things that I see on Facebook or on TV, online, whatever, like you notice it and then you realize what the hell is going on with this world? Like, I can't remember her name, but it was a girl that was stuck in sex trafficking, right? And she killed the captor. She got put in prison for killing the captor who was raping her and doing all this stuff to her.
Yeah.
Really. But it happened again. It was someone else. I can't remember her name either, but it was somebody else who went through it as well. You know, like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what's going on there. Like, why these punishments for sex crimes aren't more severe, whether it's like, I have no idea. I have no explanation for why that's the case. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it at all, you know? And like, it reminds me of, have you seen the movie Spotlight? Have you seen that movie? It's like based on the newspaper. I think they were in Boston, if I'm not mistaken, or definitely in New England somewhere, and they
Okay.
exposed like the pedophilia within the Catholic Church in like the early 2000s or something like that, and like the shit that they got away with for so long, and like the structure was built so like if you got in trouble, they would just move you to like a different church where you could basically do it all over again, and I know that it's like different between like an organized group doing this and like somebody kind of going rogue and doing it on their own. But the fact that like there aren't severe punishments for this, or it's not taken more seriously, like you're basically ruining someone's life. I mean, and not only that, you're like
Yeah.
creating a effect where that person can go on and like ruin other people's lives. Because a lot of times these things get like passed on. You know, if you're molested, you're more likely to be a molester, or so on and so forth. You know. So it's like a generational domino effect that you created, and you get out on 6 months on probation or whatever, some bullshit. You know, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bro, honestly, like, I've never been one to be like, all right, look, I want to send this person to jail for whatever reason. But between, honestly, that probably be the only thing. Like, pedophiles, like, I cannot stand them, bro. Like,
Yeah.
no, I can't.
Yeah. That's a big one.
And people be like, oh, well, you know, there's something wrong with them mentally or whatever, or there's something going on, or they were this, that, and the third. Okay, that's great. I'm not one to hear his story. Somebody else should have talked to him before he got to that point, because no.
Yeah. And then you have like this whole other layer on top of it too, with there maybe being some grand conspiracy of elites across the globe who do all this stuff, who like are participating in the sex trafficking, who are participating in the pedophilia, are participating in the ritual sacrifice of human beings. And it's like, I don't know how much of that's true or how much of it's not true, or like who's involved, who's not involved. It's like really gets really hazy and like dark. And it's kind of like, it's so dark that I can't spend much time there. Cause like when I try to like research it, it just starts, you get such the world is such a dark place. It's like hard to recover from it. You know, you kind of got to get away from it from a little bit, but at the
Yeah,
same time, somebody's got to do that hard work to like to question these things. You know?
yeah, and I can't do it. I can't dig that deep. Like, don't get me wrong, I probably scratch the surface with certain stuff because I'm a conspiracy theorist to an extent, but
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to keep going with that one, because if I do, I'm just going to get more upset. Like, what was it, Weinstein or Epstein? Oh, both of them. Like,
Yeah. 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 Weinstein was the one that was like using his position of power in Hollywood to I don't know if the word's rape, or it probably is rape, but it's like he was using his position of power to like get sex from young girls, whatever, you know, like
yeah,
super scumbag move. And he probably did it. Who knows how many? Probably at least 100 people, maybe even 1,000 people that were victims of whatever he was doing there, you know. And
yeah,
then Epstein was the whole separate thing with Epstein's Island and involved in sex trafficking, and he was tied up with some of those elites, and then he goes to prison and gets suicided. Oh, getting
yeah, yeah,
suicided in prison, huh? You hate when
yeah.
that happens. Somebody helps you kill yourself. Unreal.
Like,
There's a
bro, we
new
all know.
documentary. Go ahead. We all
I
know,
was gonna
right?
say we all know for a fact. Like, come on.
Yeah. It's like we're not stupid, you know? There's a documentary out about him on Netflix now. I haven't watched it yet, but I am interested to see some of the details, even though it is kind of dark and have to be like, I'll probably be like emotionally disturbed for like a month after I watch it, but also have a better understanding of what he did and what he was involved with. And yeah, it's deep and dark. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit here to talking about specific policies related to police brutality and or racial injustice. I think police brutality is probably easier / less controversial, so maybe we'll start there because I was talking to a friend of mine about the protests early on, and I was like, I wonder what their like demands are, because if I was like leading a protest, I would be trying to like compile my list of demands and like, we're not going to stop protesting until you meet our list of demands, you know? And when I first asked that question, I didn't really know what they were, but then as I kind of dug a little bit, there have been some kind of demands or like, you know, policy change ideas that have been put together. And I'm wondering if you have seen any of those and what your thoughts are on any of those that you've seen so far or what.
I haven't. I have not seen any of the, well, quote unquote demands that they've had. I haven't seen any of it. Well, I try not to get into it too much, but yeah, I haven't seen any of that. What as far as policies did you hear?
Yeah, so a few different ones I saw. So let's see here. Like one would be like having some sort of civilian oversight committee when there's police misconduct, because I think part of the problem now, it's too like vertically integrated, right? So you have a complaint against a police officer, but then like, what are you going to go and sue him in court? And like, the judge has to decide who they believe, the police officer or you. And if there's no evidence, like, or there's not much evidence, they're going to err on the side of believing the police officer, you know, because they're all kind of buddy, and not all the time, obviously, but there's definitely a lot of like, you know, they're part of the same team. Ultimately, they're part of the criminal justice team, so they're not going to go against their own very easily, you know. And I'm not saying it should be easy either, but there ought to be like a separate, like third party evaluation of these claims of misconduct or claims of police brutality, whatever you want to call it. So it's like the people deciding whether this person's guilty or not, you know.
Right.
I think something like that would probably be a good idea. Again, it's like a problem of like, you're going to have to spend more money. You're going to have to, it means bigger government. It means this, that, and the other. So it's like not necessarily an easy thing to do, but I think it would help, because if you have an experience where you feel like the police officer mistreated you or didn't do his job adequately, you don't really have a lot of power to do anything about that, you know?
Right.
Like your ability to, issue a complaint, you know, he's got a complaint against his name. And he's like this guy who killed George Floyd. He had like 20 complaints against his name or something like that, you know? It wasn't like the first time he did something terrible, you know? And if the third time he did something terrible, like he was no longer allowed to be a police officer, like George Floyd would still be alive.
Right.
So
that's crazy.
Something like that, like having like a jury, basically having like a civilian oversight committee that reviews these cases, at least some of them, you know, the more heinous ones especially, you know?
Right.
So I think that would be probably a good idea. Another one that I saw had to do with body cameras. And I know there's like debates about that, whether they work or they don't work. To me, it's like, it's more information. It's more data. It can give us actual evidence of what happened in the case, where it's like my word against your word and you're a cop and I'm not. You know, it's like, okay, well, what does the video show? So getting the funding together to make those more accessible to like local law enforcement, and then also like having punishments in place, like having policies in place for like people who turn off their cameras. Like, you shouldn't be able to just turn off your camera because you're about to do something terrible. Like, that defeats the whole purpose of the camera.
Exactly.
So like, it should be like an automatic something. If you turn that camera off, or you shouldn't even be able to turn it off, first of all. But if you turn that camera off or you damage it intentionally, especially when it's like in order to cover something up, it should be like an automatic something. I don't know whether it's like 6 months, a year. I don't know. I don't know what the proper punishment should be, but there should be something for that, you know?
Right.
It's like fleeing the scene of a crime. You know, it's like you smash your car and you're drunk and you leave the scene, where it's like, well, now you can't get a DUI because you fled the scene and they can't blood test you right now, but you also are going to get punished for fleeing the scene, you know, hit and run basically.
Right.
So I think that would be a pretty good idea. At least could be if it's done correctly.
Yeah. Shoot, honestly, I honestly feel they should do a bigger and deeper background check on people who are trying to be officers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now. Like
Yeah.
people always say, "Oh, do you know how many crazy people are?" And you don't realize until you see what's going on how many crazy people there are in the police force. But of course, they're everywhere. But it's like, okay, well, maybe we should have tested this guy a little bit more before we were like, all right, you can join.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And this reminds me of something I learned about like sort of statistics and how people kind of organize themselves. Because, for example, like if you look at like lawyers, like in order to become a lawyer, you have to be pretty hyperverbal. You have to be very like hardworking, pretty high IQ, So you pretty much, in order to even be a lawyer, you need to kind of check those 3 boxes, What are those boxes for police officers? Like you need to be kind of a dick. Like, I don't know. Like, what is it that, you need to, well, in all seriousness here, just to kind of paint it in like a positive way, I was just kind of joking, but like you need to be probably more aggressive than the average person. You probably need to be a little bit more dominant than the average person. You probably need to have this like sense about you that's like, I'm going to do something about this, like personally. I'm going to get involved physically to like, it's almost like courage. Like they have courage, like in order to step out and be a police officer, you have to be a courageous person, but you can't also be a abusive person or a tyrant or some of these other things that clearly some of them fall into those categories,
Right. And it's crazy because I hear it all the time. Like, oh, well, this cop abuses their wife. This cop abuses their wife. And you see it and hear it all the time. Like, why? I don't get it. Why? Is your life that bad that you got to go home and beat on someone that you love? I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's the reason they become cops, but it's like has to do with their personality. Like they deal with conflict by like escalating the aggression, because that's what they do on their job. Like you deal with conflict and like, well, you're not in charge, I'm in charge, and then next thing you know, they're rolling around on the ground and someone's in handcuffs and then someone's knees on their neck. It's like that's how they deal with stuff, So you come home and your wife's giving you shit and you don't have like the verbal capacity or like the patience or like the de-escalation techniques to like have a conversation and like try to not take things personally. Instead, you're just like your anger takes over and your inner primate takes over, and then next thing you know, you're beating your wife, and it's like, no.
Yeah, that's never okay.
Another policy that I saw that I thought would be pretty interesting, and this one gets into like economics a little bit, so I think like it's pretty cool solution, especially for me. It's kind of like nerdy with numbers and stuff and like incentives and like using the market to help drive solutions. It's like having police officers purchase their own liability insurance.
Right.
So let's say, the standard rate, you're new to the force, standard rate is like, $200 a month or something like that. Who knows what the number is? It just depends. And then like, if you go a certain number of years without incidences, that drops because like clearly you're not much of a liability. So, we don't have to charge you too much for liability insurance. But then like the opposite happens. If like a couple years in the force, you have all these complaints against you for police brutality or abuse of power or whatever. Well, then like your liability insurance goes up. So now you owe $1,000 a month to be a police officer. So eventually you like price yourself out of the job. Like you can't afford your liability insurance because insurance companies don't want to cover you. So instead, you're just like, I got to find a different job because I can't, so it's kind of like using economics to give a solution. Could
Right.
work. On paper, it makes sense anyway. Whether it would actually work is kind of another question.
Yeah, see, I'm pretty sure they would have to test that some way, shape, or form first. But the officers aren't going to have it. They're going to have a cow. They're going to snap. They're going to flip.
Yeah. And that actually leads into the next thing is police unions. And I'm not like super researched on this, so I don't want to like come across like I know everything about police unions, but I think like generally speaking, I'm pro-union in like most cases. Like I think unions are probably do more good than they do bad. At least that's kind of my general sense of things. But you have like this problem where the police unions defend people who do things that they shouldn't do because it's like part of their union contract that they're like, we're going to defend you no matter what. And it's like, I get why that's there because like innocent until proven guilty, obviously, but like it creates a problem too, right? It's like if you're doing all these things and you're getting off because the police union has such power over the city that they can basically do whatever they want. Well, now you've created a situation where cops can do whatever they want because they know the union has their back, and that's not good either. And I don't even know how you begin to address any of that, I don't know, but it's definitely a problem.
Honestly, we can't, it's not like we can make them do it. They have to want to do it on their own. I honestly feel the good cops need to sit there and hold their, partners and everybody else accountable. They need to say something. They need to do something.
Yeah.
Like there might be fewer of them, but still speak up.
Yeah. Yeah. Use that unionization power for good rather than to get away with misconduct.
Right.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And then I heard an argument the other day, or was it yesterday, the day before, talking to my friend about police unions, and he kind of made the argument that like unions in general help the bottom people the most. Like if you're really good at your job, you don't really need the union.
Right.
It doesn't really benefit you that much. And this is his argument, and I was kind of like, I understood what he was saying. And then, like, let's say, like, with the teachers union, if you're not a great teacher, you're not, like, driving results, whatever, the union's still going to protect you. Or, like, if you're a good teacher and you're having results and you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing and more, then, like, your job's secure anyway, and they're going to want to hire you, So, I don't know. It's balance. I don't know how we balance these things, but we got to figure out a way to balance them.
Bro, it's hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, I think these all, like, if they did all three of these things, like if you had the civilian oversight, you had the liability insurance, you had body cams, like those three things, that might solve like 60% of the problem. I don't know. I completely made that number up, but it seems like it would be a good start,
All right, and it's crazy because that you said the civilian oversight. Like I've been seeing pictures of people, like they actually say the shirt, civilian something whatever, like to watch what's going on. Like during these protests, they got civilians watching the cops and making sure everything's going okay.
Yeah, I saw that too. I forget what they're called. They're called like non-price standards or something like that, or I forget what they're called. Yeah, same idea though. They're like, they're not just here to watch and report,
Yep.
Yeah, that's a dark place. And it's so deep too because people take it so personally because I don't know what the numbers are. Let's say half of American families like have police in their family. Like somebody's like, this is like where the Blue Lives Matter thing comes from because they have their father or their husband or their sibling or whoever who's like on the police force. So like, yeah, they're going to take it personally when you're attacking police and saying police are bad because they know that their husband's not a bad guy unless their husband's beating them. And then they're like, oh yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah. People take it personally.
I mean, you can't blame them in a sense. Like you really can't blame them for taking it personally because that's all they know. You feel me? Like that's that's like you said, it's in their family, it's in their blood. The blue blood is in their blood. You know what I mean? Like, hell, I even watched the TV show Blue Bloods. I understand it. I get it. You feel me? But I don't know, if more people were like, the fictional Reagans, more cops were like the Reagans, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. You know, like.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how the extremes play out too. Like you can have the extreme of one end that like police officer who's noble and like an upright guy who like literally puts his life on the line every day and would die to save either one of us, Like you have those people out there, and I don't know what the percentage of those people are in the police force, but it's not zero. There's a good chunk of people who are like that and are just genuinely good people. But then you have like the opposite end, the extreme, that these people have been basically bullies since they were in middle school, and like now they've just transitioned that to like a professional bully out there on the street getting away with it, And it's like the fact that they both do the same job makes it like really difficult to like have an argument because it's like you have both things are true, What a shitstorm.
Honestly, it just, like we said earlier, it makes it hard to trust anyone when there's good people in a specific group, and you can't label everybody with a specific group. Like, it's hard. It really is. It's hard.
Yeah.
And I try not to do it myself on a regular basis. I try, but then it's like, okay, if I'm driving on the street and I see that same officer, is he going to be like, "Hey, Eric," or is he going to be like, "Well, what's that guy doing in that nice car?" What the hell?
Yeah. And it goes back to like our tribal brain again. Like part of our brain wants to put people in tribes as like enemies or allies, but it's like it's not that simple. We're all mixed together and we're all kind of different, and everything's got to be done on an individual basis. But that's like exhausting because how often do you deal with the same police officer? Unless you live in like a small town, like you're never going to get pulled over by the same police officer if you're driving in New York City, for example. Probably not.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what are, but it's probably not very big.
Yeah, slim to none, I would say.
Yeah. All right, let's shift here a little bit. So, can you tell me a little bit about your like general political ideology or like leanings, and like any examples of like how those play out, specific things? Like, any thoughts on that?
Honestly, this is probably going to be the quickest topic we've had because I really don't have any political issues.
Yeah.
Like people always say, "Oh, well, F Trump," or this, that, and the third about Trump. Okay, I mean, you can feel that way. Well, he said this about this group, and he's racist. Look, I personally, I don't watch the debates. I don't get into that because I just don't like to, But I personally haven't heard him say anything racist. But it's like if I said that to somebody around me now, they're like, "Well, you didn't hear him say something about the Mexicans and then the wall?" And, okay, there's already a wall there. What's your point? Like that's where I'm at with it. Like I don't understand what the point of us debating about this is. The two of lesser evils, I would say.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
As long as they do a good job and they don't destroy the country, I don't care who it is. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think going back to the Trump piece, I think the beef there is that like he's not the only one who does this. Lots of people do this. It's like this low key covert racism that they use, where it's like they know all the words to say and they know all the words not to say.
Yeah.
Like to play on that racial tension, but to do it in a way that's like that they can defend it. It's like, well, that's not what I said. Like you want to say that I'm racist, but I didn't say anything racist. And it's like, no, but you like said everything around that thing and you pointed in that direction.
You know what you meant.
Yeah.
You know what you meant.
Right. Right.
I definitely feel you on that.
Yeah. And I watched the documentary The 13th a few days ago. Have you seen that documentary yet?
I probably watched it once. Yeah, I watched it one time.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty interesting, like specifically when they started talking about how the Clinton, like Bill Clinton, he kind of shifted and took this like tough on crime platform in order to compete with the, and it kind of shifted the whole political landscape to like, okay, now everybody's tough on crime. Like everybody has to have this tough on crime stance, or otherwise you're not winning your election. So forget it, you know? And how that tough on crime language was, it's racial language sort of, or they, it's weird how they did it. It's like layers. Like you have to pull away the layer to like, oh, like, you know,
you have to get a little bit deeper to see what they're actually who they're actually talking about. Like, what? Wait a minute. That's Bobby up the street. What?
Yeah. And a couple other things that I had like that really kind of bothered me in that documentary is like, when you're saying tough on crime, like who commits crimes? First of all, who commits crimes? People in poverty commit crimes. People who have nothing to lose, who are in desperate situations, who don't have education, who don't have role models, who don't have any of this shit. Like they're the ones most likely who commit crimes, you know, most of the time. So like tough on crime is great, but it doesn't solve the problem of like poverty. Like maybe we should be trying to address poverty as a route to solving crime rather than just like building prisons and locking people up who are already in desperate situations anyway, you know?
Man. And it's crazy because, you know, that's what they want. Well, see, here we go with my political deep thinking and stuff. But I personally feel that's what they want. They don't want a cure. Just like medicine, they don't want a cure for it. You know, if they wanted a cure, that would stop the flow of the money. The fact that they're still imprisoning people, there's still money.
Yeah. Right. It's a huge pile of money too. It's not like it's not like a couple dollars at stake here. You know, it's like a multi-billion-dollar a year industry that is the prison industrial complex that employs however many police officers across the country, that employs however many correctional officers in state and county prisons. You know, it's like could be ballpark. It might be 10% of our population work in one of those fields. 1 in 10.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 1 in 20, but it's in that range most likely. That's a lot of people. That's like 50 million people or 30 million people or something like that. That's a lot.
Bro, it's too many. That's the whole point. It's too many. Like,
yeah. And the graph too, they show that graph in that documentary where it's like the number of people incarcerated, and it's like, you know, it's climbing, but then it like hits this exponential growth in like whatever the 90s into the 2000s, and now we're at like more than 1% of our population is in prison.
Bro, it's a bigger picture. I guarantee it's a bigger picture than what people are putting in front of the TV. It's a bigger picture than what's going on. Like I'm not gonna say their story, but I'm not gonna say who it is, but I'm gonna say their story. You feel me? Like, you know, a dude got locked up on his 18th birthday. He's been in there. What's today? The 11th.
7th, June 7th.
7th. Yeah, in 5 days, it'd be a year that he's been in there for joyriding.
Yeah.
Really. Like, it's crazy. You look at the system and you look at certain stuff and like it's rigged, bro. It's rigged against anybody that's not doing well. Black, white, it doesn't matter. Anybody that's not doing well, anybody that can't pay, even if you can't pay $500, if you can't pay $500 to get out on bond, you're screwed. You know, they will forget you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was terrible in that documentary too. They showed that one young kid who, they didn't even say what his crime was. All they said it was like a petty crime that he did that he didn't even do. And he couldn't make bail, couldn't make $10,000 to make bail or whatever it was, couldn't do it. His family didn't have any money. So he spent 3 years in prison only to be the charges to be dropped. Are you fucking kidding me? That is
Khalif
unreal.
Browder.
What's his name?
I think you're talking about Khalif Browder. He
Yeah,
spent his time
yeah.
on Rikers Island.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the saddest part to me, like he was telling the story, and then you end up finding out he kills himself. Like, wow, because he was in solitary that long, you know? Like at one point you could get your GED and everything in prison. Now they stopped that. Like I don't get that.
It almost seems like it has to be corruption. Like they have to want you to go back. Because if they wanted you to not go back,
Yep.
they would be investing more in things like education and reform and training programs and finding a way for when you get out to not be immediately in poverty again. So you're like in a position where you want to commit crimes in the first place. Like they just want you to come back, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Well, it does because they're the big money contracts keeping those prisons
Exactly.
filled. Man.
Exactly, bro.
It pisses me off big time.
Yeah, excuse me, even if you weren't before, you could have been completely innocent. They're going to make you institutionalized after that.
Yeah. And like I feel bad like going to the zoo, seeing animals in cages and they're like animals, but you put like, and obviously humans are animals too, but like you put these humans in these cages and treat them like animals. Like, what do you expect them to do? Like, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to break these people. You're going to make them more desperate than they were anyway. So messed up.
And it's like they don't realize. My thing, how could you not you personally, but how could a system that's doing all this not realize that it's doing all this to the people that it has in its possession, I guess, quote unquote, if you want to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. They have to realize it, right?
You would think.
How could they not? And then like there's so many layers of this, but I saw, and this isn't like the first person to ever have this opinion, but I saw Elon Musk tweeted like how ridiculous it is that the marijuana industry went from being like federally a crime to like, you know, being like a felony to like being essential business during a pandemic, but yet we still have people locked up for possession or distribution of this drug. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, why are these people not let out? How is this drug even still illegal? Like, all the data is out there. This is way less harmful than alcohol, and alcohol is available like on every single city block in the whole country, with the exception of like one state. You know, it's like, are you kidding me?
But I'm trying to tell you that's why, because they know for a fact marijuana, it's positive to me anyway. It's positive. It does good for people. It helps people. Alcohol kills. So I mean, again, they know what they're doing, bro. They know what they're doing.
And the other day too, when I was talking to a friend, if I could like give my life to like solve some of these problems, I would, you know. But actually, it's not that easy, right? Because like it doesn't really work that way. You don't get that deal. Nobody's gonna offer you that deal. Instead, you gotta dedicate your life to it. You gotta fucking work every single day. Probably gonna fail. You know, you hit your goal. Still probably, but like that's what you really got to do. You know, it's like you don't get to just trade your life. You got to trade like, your every day. You know, to these and people do. People do. Look at all these people out in the streets protesting. Like they're not all affected the same way, but they're all out there doing what they think's right. You know, and I appreciate it.
Hey, you and me both. Like, don't get me wrong. I was out there, you know, a couple times, but as far as me being out there every day and every night, I was, but I got work. Okay, I'm not even gonna lie and say anything else. It's because I got work in the morning, so I'm not even. No, look, I support it. I'll go. I'm with you. I got work though, so there's so much I can do.
Yeah. And I feel like that's purposeful too. Like they make everybody so like just barely getting by that they don't have any extra to give, you know? So it's tough.
Yeah, it's terrible out here, bro. It really is. Like, and everyone always says the Commonwealth state, Commonwealth, but when I moved down here, I didn't realize that Pennsylvania was a Commonwealth. Like, I found that out when I moved here.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as, at least to me, it wasn't as bad. So I don't get what the big difference is.
I don't get it either. I know that Pennsylvania's Commonwealth, but I don't really know like what that means effectively. Like what that actually, I don't really know. I'm not sure.
It means government screws you whenever they can. They take more money. That's what it means to me.
I see. So next question here for you, because something that I believe is that like the political and the philosophical and the religious are all kind of intertwined. I'm wondering if you have any like religious affiliations or religious beliefs and how those might impact your political beliefs, if at all.
I want to say I'm a Christian, raised Baptist. Well, I was raised Baptist. But, yeah, I'm just going to say I'm spiritual at this point. I believe in a higher being. I believe in God. But I don't think any of that affects my political outviews at all,
Mm-hmm. I see. I'm trying to think whether I should dig deeper there or just call that good.
Hey, it's on you, man. Just let me know.
So saying I'll dig a little bit and see where we end up. So like saying you're a Christian, like the thing, like when you look at like the story of Christ, he was sort of a political figure. He
right.
At least in like the literal senses of some of the stories of like being kind of an enemy of the state of like the Roman Empire, and also kind of in a way being an adversary to some of the Jewish powers that be at the time, the powers that were, and him kind of like we talked about at the beginning here, refusing to pick a side. Like I'm not gonna be a Republican. I'm not gonna be a Democrat. He like in his story, he kind of stood alone there too and said, I'm not gonna pick a side. I'm gonna do what's right. I'm gonna like try to do what's best. So he's kind of political in a way, or maybe it's like, I don't want to say it's apolitical, but it's like the political piece that is the individual, and
right.
having that individual responsibility within your political sphere that you're in, rather than taking the easy route and joining a team that you don't even agree with, and then it's not long before you join that team that you don't agree with till you end up just agreeing with them because you kind of get like swallowed up by the machine.
Right. See, I never looked at it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of grew up mostly atheist, and I still sort of identify as that, but I have like extracted a lot of value from religious stories, and like the story of Jesus in particular. I think that there's a lot of value in there to think about how to be as a person and like how to live your life and how to think about things. It's been pretty helpful, especially if you start walking down a dark path. You're like, oh, I see where this goes. I don't want to go any further down this dark path,
Right.
You know where, Yeah.
So I got a question. I'm sorry. I just got to ask you, because I saw this and I saw Chance the Rapper posted it, I guess. Do you feel Jesus was lynched?
Well, he was crucified, right? Which is a form of public capital punishment. So, I mean, like if you look at what happened to Emmett Till, like he was lynched. Like, what happened to Jesus Christ? He was crucified. I don't know which one I'd rather be. I wouldn't want to be either of them.
Right.
They both is brutal. It's a brutal way to die, to be killed like that. So it's kind of like whether you want to use the term lynched or whatever. It's public public execution in heinous style. So
yeah,
I think you can make that argument. He was lynched. I mean, in a sense. Yeah.
You see, like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Right?
He was. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
people look at it and look at the cross like, oh, well, it's a great symbol, but it's been washed and it's been sanitized to the point where it's not realizing the cross back then were for people to be crucified. So why? Why is that okay? I don't get that.
Yeah. You don't get what?
Like, it's supposed to be a symbol, I guess, of hope, the cross, but it's so weird when I think deeper on that. Is like, but they killed him on the cross.
Yeah. To me, what it symbolizes is the necessity for self-sacrifice and the unavoidable nature of suffering. Like, life is suffering. That's like part of Buddhist teaching too. You know, like, we're all going to suffer. We're all going to die. You know, and there's no real avoiding that. And maybe sometimes the best thing to do is like bear that burden like willingly, and like willingly sacrifice yourself for what is most good, you know?
Okay.
And you're right. Like that whole language around that is like, isn't talked about a lot when it comes to, I don't know. I'm not that I'm like super familiar with Christianity and like actually like talking to Christians about this stuff, but like, it's not part of the main message that you hear, you know?
Right.
But that's what I think about when I see that. I'm like, that dude died, like was killed, like he willingly did that too. Like, it's not like he like couldn't have left. Like, he could have gotten away and like whatever, avoided that whole mess and just went along with it and not been such a pain in the ass, you know? But sometimes you got to be a pain in the ass. Sometimes you got to pay for it, you know? But
yeah,
if he just went along with it, if he made buddy with the Romans, whatever, nobody would know his name. There wouldn't have been a religion that stemmed from his life, you know, whatever. He'd just been nobody. He'd just been some schmuck in history like everybody else, you know? So.
That's very true. Yeah. I guess somebody had to take the first step, right?
Yeah. Speaking of Chance the Rapper, though, my dude, I love that album, Chance 3. I listen to that shit all the time.
Bro, honestly, I don't even be listening to a lot of the artists that be out. I just saw that post, but I probably listened to like 2 or 3 mainstream artists, but that's only because I've been listening to them since I was younger. You know what I'm saying? Like,
who's that?
Like Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
T.I.
Yeah.
It's a few that that are in the group, in the bunch. You know, Wayne, T.I., Game, Snoop, a lot of older people.
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah,
I really don't listen to the new stuff for real.
Yeah. Yeah. I like guys like Chance the Rapper and Kanye, especially when they bring that, like, some of those songs that are like almost like gospel music, that they're like mixing hip hop with gospel music.
Right.
And it's like, you know, it's like there's so much heart in it. You know, you can just feel like the love in it. You know, that's what gets me.
I don't blame you, bro.
Yeah, and I listened to Lil Wayne too, like back in the day. I like some of his shit too, but not the same way that I like someone like Chance. You know?
Definitely not going to be the same, bro. No. None of these artists are the same.
Yeah. All right, let's see. All right, I got some controversial questions here for you.
Okay.
How do you feel about things like affirmative action and or diversity quotas? What do you think about those things?
It's stupid. It's stupid. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
What is the point? What is the point? We're all human. That's how I feel about that. We're all human. There should be no quota on how many people or how many certain people do whatever. Like, if that person is qualified to do the job, hire them. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, just like affirmative action. It's stupid to me. It really is. It's reverse racism. Yeah, that's stupid because the original racism is dumb enough. Why do we have to reverse it?
That's funny. I feel you on that. I wanted to see kind of what you thought, because I've had someone on the podcast before. They're a pretty conservative guy, and he kind of was against it. And I understood the points he's making, and I understand too that it's probably well intentioned, but that it does have some negative consequences too.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it too. I could see the arguments for it, especially if you're dealing with a community that's disadvantaged or has been historically disadvantaged, and trying to help them catch up a little bit, trying to create policies that allow for that. Or if you have evidence of discrimination, there's been some popular studies that came out where showing if you have a black sounding name like Jamal or whatever, you're more likely to be discriminated against when applying for jobs. Same resume, whatever.
Yep.
Same everything, same GPA, same work experience, whatever. But if you have a black sounding name, you're half as likely to get the job or something silly like that,
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that.
Yeah. So, but does a policy like affirmative action solve that problem? Probably not, even though that's what you're trying to do. Does it actually effectively do it? That's a whole other question,
No. No,
yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. And I know too, it creates a lot of animosity because you get this idea that oh, this person just got this job because they're black. And it's well, you tried to get rid of racism and you just planted a racist seed in everybody's head instead. And it grew into a tree. So it's congratulations. So yeah, it's a mess too.
It's pointless.
Yeah. All right, another one for you. Well, advice for white allies that want to help. They really they're saying Black Lives Matter. They're saying I have white privilege. They're saying that so on and so forth. What can they actually do to help? What do you, either I don't mean you personally, but what can they do? What should they do? What shouldn't they do to help in these cases? To help push this movement?
I would say just keep doing what they're doing, keep doing what everybody's been doing, as far as going out there, showing support, making sure you do post online if you see something or hear something, make sure you do say something instead of just being oh, well, maybe I should just tell my friend. No, don't just tell your friend about it. Speak up. If you know it's wrong, say something, but that's really to me a loaded question because there's so much that I could say, but it wouldn't be fair to me to say.
Yeah.
Because it's not I'm out there on the front lines on a regular basis, all right, well, what can we do? What can we do? We got to do this, that, and the third,
Yeah.
Just keep doing what they're doing. Keep doing what everybody has been doing, Everybody's been supportive, trying to stay positive about it. That's what we need.
Yeah. Anything they shouldn't be doing that they are doing? Anything that's counterproductive, you think?
See, I would say I couldn't even give you an example because I wanted to say the protesters, I wanted to say the rioters and looters, but that's completely different. Those are two separate, groups. I wouldn't put them together.
Right.
That's why I was I couldn't even say it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole mess too, because I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say 99% of the people are peaceful protesters, but you have 1% of the people who are there to do damage or to loot or whatever. If you got 10,000 people at a protest, that's 100 people that are there to serve. That's a lot of people, And plus they're intermixed with everybody. It's kind of hard to keep track of them. And you don't know whether they're acting on their own or they're working something on behalf of some group or some other group. You just don't know. It's it gets so lost in the mist that, and then everybody just blames the rioters. Both sides well, the rioters. And it's well, the rioters are on your team. No, they're on your team. It's who? It's they're not anybody's team. They're on their own team, acting on their own.
Exactly.
Or maybe they're not. It's hard. It's kind of, that's where my conspiracy brain comes in. It's what are they trying to accomplish by doing this?
And see, we're right here, bro. Honestly, as far as the conspiracy thing goes with this, because I feel the rioters that are actually starting stuff aren't part of a movement at all. They're trying to start stuff so there will be martial law, so it will be enforced, so it'll be a bigger issue than what it needs to be. I think they're trying to play out to a certain plan. You know, I think they're trying to play out a plan.
Yeah. Which is
like, what is it? New World Order. Yeah. I didn't want to say it, but New World Order. That's just what it is,
right.
bro. Like, as much as you hear it, as much as you see it,
yeah.
do your own research about it, there's no denying certain stuff that's been happening, like, all over the world. It's kind of convenient how it all coincides and lines up.
Yeah. Yeah, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. It's hard to know because our brains are like, our human brains are like wired to see patterns, to like identify the order within the chaos, you know? But in this specific instance, it could just be a bunch of chaos. Like it's I'm not saying that it is or isn't, but it's like hard to tell the difference between something that's structured and something that's just like so chaotic but moving in the same direction, you know? And then just to kind of back up a couple steps, like the new world order piece, like really what I think you're saying, if just kind of break it down in smaller pieces, that like they're trying to justify increasing the police state. You know, if you show that people are violent, people are dangerous, they can't be trusted. We can't let them peacefully protest anymore because it's dangerous. You know, it's like, okay, well now it's like the police state is out of control and it's like your rights are being subverted, and next thing you know, it's like you're in a authoritarian dictatorship more than you already were, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mess.
The country. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, another question for you. Advice for people who like, especially white people who think that they're not racist. They say that they're not racist, but they say things like all lives matter or white privilege is a myth or those sorts of things. Like, what would you say to those people who say stuff like that? Do you have a problem with those people? Does it like think it's just a misunderstanding? Whatever.
I honestly want to believe it's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I would like to believe. You know, as far as the all lives matter thing, because that's obvious. We know all lives matter. We get that. You know, but if you're not realizing that Black lives matter too, you know, like that's an issue. Yeah. You know, and people saying that white privilege doesn't exist. I've had white friends tell me that it exists, so I'm not going to sit here and say that it doesn't exist, even if they argue that it doesn't exist. Like, you could be my friend and say, oh, well, it doesn't exist. Okay. I'm not going to argue. I'm going to let you believe what you want. I'll talk to you later about it, but I'm not going to argue.
Yeah, I think with that one in particular, they think that it doesn't exist because they don't see it. And the reason they don't see it is because it's like a fish in water. Like, you don't see the water if you're a fish. You're just a fish. It's like, what the hell is water? What are you even talking about? Just no, you live in water. Like, this is your life. Like, it's there. Like, you just don't think about it, you know? I'm trying to get people to like appreciate that. And like, I made a mistake the other day arguing with somebody, and like they were saying like all lives matter, and they were saying this, that, and the other things, and they were being kind of a dick about it, you know? Like, use them as an example. I'm like this is your privilege. Like, let me show you like your privilege. And it fucking backfired big time. Like, it turned into a big fight, and people don't want to hear that, you know? And like that goes back to like the Jesus symbolism, you know? I should have used myself. I should have willingly sacrificed myself and made it like, well, here's an example of my privilege. And like, here's the example. There are all the things that I had to deal with, you know? And instead I made it about him, and like, that doesn't work. That just makes somebody hate you and makes it tribal, or it makes it, oh, your phone's dying. We're at about an hour and a half here anyway, so we can wrap it up here real quick.
Okay.
How much, what percent are you at here? What time, how many we got, like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute?
I'm on 3%.
All right. So we can wrap it up here. So any last questions? Because I have more here, but we're not going to get to it all. So any last questions for me, or anything you want to get out of me, and I'll hit you with one more question and then we can wrap it up.
Honestly, I just want to say, bro, thank you for having me, and I appreciate you, and I hope to get to talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. it was good having me on. It's I'm really having a fun time with this podcast. It's been great to kind of talk with people one-on-one. I really I'm like an extroverted person, so I really love talking to people, but I get really worn out, like exhausted when it's too many people trying to talk at once. And like that's why when Christy was like, "We'll do 3 people," I was like, "I don't know." Because like
I'm like, yo, look, whatever he wants to do, I'm down. Just whatever.
Yeah.
Hey.
I want to be able to listen to you, and I also want to say what I want to say. And when there's too many people, like everyone just wants to say what they want to say, and like nobody's really listening, I feel like it just gets harder. I'd rather just maintain it this way.
Right.
All right, so I'll hit you with one question here. One last question. What do we got here? Let's go with who's your favorite or some of your favorite like civil rights leaders and why? Like who of all the people that fought for this movement, who jumps out to you the most as like being the kind of the cream of the crop and why?
Honestly, I used to say Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
Used to, because I always believed in by any means necessary, and I still somewhat to an extent do. If it's for a better good and if it's for spreading the positivity for everybody, I'm with it. But yeah, I would say he was the main one, honestly. Like he was the top tier for me.
Yeah.
Like all my life, he's been the one that I've been inspired to. Like everyone say MLK and everything. Yeah, he's great, but for me, it was Malcolm.
Yeah. I felt that way too, especially as a younger person. Like when I was like my teens and going through college, I had 2 posters on my wall. I had Malcolm X and I had Charles Darwin. Those are my dudes. I had them on the wall, But then when I took that Martin Luther King Jr. course at Penn State, like something that I learned there too is like part of the reason Malcolm's strategy maybe wasn't going to work is because like by any means necessary, like reminds me of something my dad taught me. Is like you don't box a boxer. Like you're going to get in a fight with a boxer, you don't box a boxer. You got to figure out a way to like fight them in a different way. And like the reason I'm tying this back to Malcolm X is like you don't go to war with the U.S. government, because if there's one thing the U.S. government knows how to do is go to war and kill people.
Exactly.
So if you're going to fight that battle, you got to fight it on your own terms in a different way rather than with guns and tanks, because we know out of our 250-year history as a nation, we've been at war for 230 of them or whatever the number is. It's like we got that down to a science. We know how to do that, So that's where I think between the two, I think Martin had a better strategy. But both of them ended up dead, so that's what we're dealing with. Shit's heavy. All right, Eric. Thanks for coming on the show, my friend. It was good talking.
No doubt, Jordan. All right, bro.
Keep in touch with me. Share the podcast with your friends, and we'll do it again sometime. All right, keep it real. Peace.